How do you survive discovering that the man you trusted for more than half a century lived an entire second life without you? I'm 78 years old, and until a few months ago, I believed I understood my marriage, my past, and the man I shared my bed with for 54 years. I believed I knew the rhythm of our life, the meaning of our silences, the reasons behind his absences. I was wrong about everything. People assume betrayal announces itself loudly, but it doesn't. It hides inside routines. It disguises itself as work trips, tired smiles, missed calls explained away by bad connections and time zones. For decades, I told myself we were just an ordinary elderly couple who survived life together. Marriage, love, sacrifice, forgiveness, loss, all blended into something familiar and safe. Or so I thought. The truth arrived quietly, almost politely, the way devastating news often does. A document, a name I didn't recognize, a foreign address. And suddenly, the past rewrote itself in front of my eyes. Another woman. Children I never knew existed. A second family in another country, living a parallel life while I cooked dinners, raised children, and waited for him to come home. At my age, shock doesn't scream. It settles deep in the chest. It tightens your breath. It makes you question every memory, every anniversary, every "I love you" whispered in the dark. I replayed our entire marriage like a broken film reel, searching for the moment where the truth should have revealed itself. Were the signs always there? Or did love make me blind on purpose? There's a special kind of pain that comes when betrayal arrives late in life. You don't just grieve the relationship, you grieve time itself. 54 years is not just a marriage, it's a lifetime. And suddenly, that lifetime feels borrowed, even stolen. I wasn't just asking who he was. I was asking who I had been all along. I haven't confronted him yet. Not because I'm weak, but because at 78, every word carries weight. Some truths heal. Others destroy what little stability remains. And as I sit with this secret, heavier than any suitcase he ever carried across borders, I'm forced to face the question I never imagined asking this late in life. After decades of marriage, love, loyalty, and loss, what do you do when the truth arrives too late to fix anything? Before this story goes any further, I want to stop for just a moment and ask you something honestly. Stories like this are not just about betrayal, marriage, or secrets hidden for decades. They are about understanding how easily a life can be built on assumptions, how silence can last for generations, and how love and truth do not always grow at the same pace. If any part of this feels familiar, unsettling, or painfully close to home, that reaction matters. Take a second and leave a comment. Tell me what went through your mind when you heard that a 54-year marriage could hide another entire family. Even a single word like shock, betrayal, or fear helps others feel less alone when they read it. These conversations are important because they force us to look at relationships honestly, without illusions. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told and understood, please leave a like so this reaches people who may need it. And if you want to follow the rest of this journey, the difficult decisions, the emotional consequences, and the questions that still don't have answers, consider subscribing. This story isn't finished yet, and what comes next may be even harder to face. For most of my life, if someone had asked me to describe my marriage, I would have used words like steady, loyal, ordinary, safe. We met young, built a home, raised children, paid bills, argued about small things, forgave bigger ones, and learned how to grow old side by side. 54 years creates a rhythm that feels unbreakable. You stop questioning it. You stop inspecting it. You trust it the way you trust your own heartbeat. In the early years, he was attentive in the way men of his generation were taught to be. Not overly emotional, not expressive with words, but present. He worked hard. He provided. He came home tired and quiet, and I told myself that was love wearing a different uniform. I learned to read his moods, to give him space, to fill the silences with routine. Marriage, after all, is made of compromises that slowly become invisible. As the decades passed, life distracted us. Children, illnesses, aging parents, financial worries. Love changed shape. Passion softened into familiarity. We stopped asking deep questions because we believed we already knew the answers. When he traveled more often, I didn't accuse. I adapted. When he grew distant at times, I blamed stress. When I felt lonely beside him, I told myself this was just what long marriages looked like in old age. I see now how easily certainty grows when you want stability more than truth. I mistook consistency for honesty. I confused longevity with loyalty. We celebrated anniversaries that felt meaningful, never imagining that somewhere else, another woman was marking time by the same calendar, building memories that mirrored mine in disturbing ways. The most painful part isn't just that he lied. It's that our marriage, the one I defended, the one I believed in completely, existed alongside another life without collapsing. That realization unsettles everything. It makes me question how much of a relationship is built on shared reality, and how much survives simply because we choose not to look too closely. Now, when I think back on our years together, I'm not searching for dramatic betrayals. I'm searching for quiet moments I dismissed. The nights I felt unseen. The questions I didn't ask because I was afraid of the answers. Love doesn't disappear suddenly. Sometimes it's slowly diluted by secrets, and you don't notice until it's too late. Looking back, the signs were always there, subtle and easy to ignore. Long business trips he claimed were meetings, phone calls that ended abruptly, weekends spent with old friends that never seemed to include anyone I knew. I made excuses for everything. I told myself that love involves trust, that suspicion poisons relationships, and that a long marriage requires patience, forgiveness, and letting small worries fade away. For years, I constructed a world in which these absences had logical explanations. I told myself he was tired, overworked, or simply forgetful. When letters arrived with postmarks I didn't recognize, I assumed it was distant friends or professional correspondence. The problem wasn't the signs. It was my willingness to overlook them. I wanted a story that made sense, and my heart filled in the blanks with the version of him I loved. Even the little things, the change in tone when speaking on the phone, the faint hesitation when asked where he'd been, were dismissed as trivial. I'd smile, nod, and pretend nothing had happened, convincing myself that our decades together were enough to explain any inconsistency. I believed that after 54 years, nothing could shake the foundation we had built. I was wrong. What's terrifying is how easily you can normalize lies when they are woven into the fabric of everyday life. Ordinary routines, cooking together, paying bills, celebrating birthdays, become shields that blind you. You trust the comfort of familiarity more than the unsettling truths that might be hidden behind smiles and habitual gestures. Now, every quiet evening and every unaccounted-for trip replay in my mind. I ask myself if there were moments I could have questioned, conversations I should have had, instincts I silenced. The betrayal isn't just in the discovery, it's in realizing how completely I let my perception of reality be controlled by the very person I trusted most. The truth didn't arrive with shouting or dramatic confrontation. It slipped into my life quietly, the way something devastating often does when you least expect it and are least prepared to defend yourself. I wasn't searching for answers. I wasn't suspicious. I was simply organizing old paperwork, the kind of task you do at this age to feel useful, to keep your hands busy and your mind calm. That's when I found it. A name I didn't recognize, a foreign address. Documents written in another language, carefully folded, carefully hidden. At first, I assumed it was a mistake, something outdated, something that belonged to someone else. Denial is fast when the alternative is unbearable. I told myself there had to be a simple explanation, because after 54 years of marriage, there always had been. But the pieces didn't fit. The dates overlapped with years I remembered clearly. Years we celebrated anniversaries. Years we held grandchildren. Years we mourned losses together. And suddenly my hands started to shake in a way they never had before. Not from age, but from fear. A deep, instinctive fear that told me my life was about to split in two. I didn't confront him right away. I needed proof, not because I doubted what I was seeing, but because part of me still hoped I was wrong. That hope didn't last long. A phone call answered too carefully, a name spoken with practiced neutrality, and finally the confirmation I never wanted. He didn't deny it. He didn't even try very hard to explain it away. He admitted there was another woman, another country, another family. Children who had grown up calling him father while my own life unfolded in ignorance. I remember sitting there, listening, feeling strangely detached, as if I were watching someone else's marriage collapse. At 78, your body reacts differently to shock. There are no screams, just a heavy silence and a sense that the floor has disappeared beneath your feet. In that moment, I realized the truth hadn't just arrived late. It had arrived when there was no time left to rebuild, no easy escape, no clear path forward. And that realization stayed with me, pressing on my chest, forcing me to confront a question I never imagined facing so late in life. What do you do when the truth finally shows itself, but the damage is already woven into decades of living? Knowing there was another family was one thing. Seeing the details of that life was something else entirely. It's strange how the mind works when it's trying to protect itself. At first, I avoided imagining them. I told myself that knowing more would only make the pain worse. But once a door like that opens, it never really closes again. Curiosity and fear begin to work together, quietly, relentlessly. I learned that he wasn't just visiting someone occasionally. He had routines there, holidays, traditions, a home that wasn't ours. He had children who knew his laugh, his habits, his stories, children who never knew about me. And in that realization, something inside me collapsed. I wasn't just betrayed as a wife. I was erased as a reality in another place. What hurt most was not jealousy in the way people imagine it. At 78, you don't compete over romance or youth, you compare meaning. I compared the years, the birthdays he missed here to be there, the emotional energy that must have been divided, carefully rationed between two lives. I wondered which version of him they knew. Was he gentler there, more present? Or was deception simply a skill he perfected everywhere? I found myself asking questions I never thought I would ask at this age. Did he love them more? Did he feel freer there? Or did he compartmentalize love the same way he compartmentalized lies? These questions don't seek answers because answers rarely heal. They exist because the mind refuses to accept that a lifetime can be shared without consent. The most humiliating part was realizing how ordinary our marriage looked from the outside, while something extraordinary and devastating existed just beyond my awareness. Friends praised our longevity. Family admired our stability. No one knew that stability was built on omission. That admiration now feels like salt in a wound that refuses to close. As I processed the existence of this other family, I began to understand that betrayal doesn't just break trust. It fractures identity. I wasn't only asking who he was anymore. I was asking who I had been and whether the life I lived was fully mine or partially stolen without my knowledge. That question followed me into every quiet moment, growing heavier as I realized it led to something even more painful waiting ahead. What surprised me most was not just the anger or the sadness, but the shame. A quiet, corrosive humiliation that settled in my chest and refused to leave. I felt embarrassed for believing so completely, for defending him for decades, for explaining away behaviors that now seemed obvious. At 78, you don't expect to feel foolish, yet that feeling crept in slowly, whispering that I should have known better. I began questioning myself more harshly than I ever questioned him. How could I miss something so enormous? Was I too trusting, too accommodating, too willing to accept silence as peace? I replayed conversations from 30, 40 years ago, wondering if the truth had slipped out in ways I refused to hear. Guilt became my constant companion, even though I knew, logically, that his deception was not my responsibility. There is a particular cruelty in being betrayed late in life. You are old, enough to understand complexity, yet too old to start over easily. Friends assume resilience comes with age, but they don't see the exhaustion that follows decades of emotional investment. I felt exposed, stripped of dignity, as if the world could suddenly see the private foolishness I had carried unknowingly for years. What haunted me most were the unanswered questions. Did anyone else know? Did our children unknowingly cross paths with their half-siblings in some distant place? Did he ever feel remorse? Or was guilt something he learned to silence just as I learned to trust? These questions don't demand answers. They linger, circling the mind in the early hours of the morning when sleep refuses to come. Humiliation isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the way you hesitate before telling your story, unsure if people will pity you or judge you. It's the moment you realize your marriage, once a source of pride, now feels like evidence in a case you never agreed to participate in. And as these thoughts accumulated, I understood that the hardest part was still ahead, because sooner or later, every secret demands a decision. If you stayed with me until the end of this story, thank you. I know this wasn't easy to hear. Stories like this force us to confront uncomfortable truths about marriage, love, loyalty, and the secrets people can carry for decades. If this story made you think about your own life, your own relationship, or questions you've been avoiding, that matters. If you're still here, please subscribe to the channel. These are not just stories for entertainment. They are real-life confessions meant to help us understand ourselves and the people we love before it's too late. Leave a like if you stayed until the end, because that tells the platform this kind of honest storytelling deserves to be heard. And I want you to leave a comment. Write one simple phrase. Truth matters. Or, if you prefer, share your own thoughts about forgiveness, betrayal, or secrets in long marriages. I read the comments, and your words help others realize they are not alone. Now, if another video is appearing on your screen, I invite you to keep watching. The next story goes even deeper into the emotional realities people face after a lifetime of love and silence. Thank you for listening, for staying, and for being part of this conversation.